Welcome back to Middle East Unfiltered. Joining us once again is Luana Fabry-Goris, a Jewish Australian Zionist with both a BA and MA in the study of religions, where her thesis is focused on anti-Semitism. Today, we'll dive into the recent wave of demonstrations across Australia, unpack the motivations driving them, and explore how they connect to the broader debates around Zionism, Israel, and the Middle East. This is Middle East Unfiltered. Let's get started. Hi, Luana.
Hi, how are you? Nice to talk with you again.
You too. Luana, when most people think of Bondi Beach, they picture a long stretch of sand where people come to surf, relax, and have a good time. But what happened there last Sunday was very different. Can you walk us through the events and what made them so significant?
What happened at Bondi? Bondi is an area that is predominantly Jewish, has a large Jewish population. So the situation there is you had people who were pro-Palestine protesters, and pro-Palestine means anti-Israel, anti-Jewish. You can't define it in any other way. They're not really pro-Palestine. They're anti-Israel. So we had these people that came to Bondi knowing full well that it is a very much a Jewish area, and they came to protest, as we would say, on our turf. And that's where the problem began. So a lot of Jews turned out, and with Israeli flags and Australian flags, and the pro-Palestine people came out with their Palestinian flags, only their Palestinian flag. They weren't flying any Australian flags, and they decided to protest against the Jewish community. And that's what it was about. Overall, it went really well. There were some problems where there were some scuffles between people, but overall, it went very well. There was a very good Jewish turnout. Australian Jews turned out, plus Australian non-Jews turned out as well to support. And basically, that was it. It was just once again the pro-Palestine people turning up and causing trouble and making the Jewish community feel incredibly uncomfortable, which is their goal.
How did the government react?
The government didn't react. The government hasn't reacted since October 7 in any significant way whatsoever, which is why these pro-Palestine protests really continue to happen, because they think that they can. And essentially, they can. So this is why it goes on every week.
Luana, you are accomplished in the study of anti-Semitism and anti-Israeli demonstrations. People chant from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, and claim it's purely political, but we know it calls for the destruction of Israel. How do we understand when criticism of Israel crosses the line into anti-Semitism?
People think they can differentiate between hatred of Jews and criticizing Israel, but it's ridiculous to think that it's different, because if you're going to criticize the homeland of the Jewish people, you're really criticizing the Jewish people, because you're trying to invalidate our homeland's right to exist. If you're going to invalidate our homeland, that renders us homeless, right? So it doesn't make sense when people say we can criticize Israel, but it's not anti-Semitism. It doesn't make sense at all. I mean, I understand that there are things that the Israeli government might do that that Jewish people may not like either, but that's not the point. And also, why do people who have nothing to do with Israel or the Israeli government, why is it their business? Why do they think they have the right to speak against the Jewish homeland, and they don't even live there, and they're not even Jewish? I think people really need to know that, number one, it is not their business, and the only reason that they're criticizing Israel is because deep down they want the Jews to be homeless. That's what they want. So that's what they let it out by criticizing Israel. I don't see it any other way.
Thank you for explaining. I want to talk about Zionism. Can you explain what Zionism actually is? People used to the word that it's like something sinister, but they never define it. Zionism goes back to ancient times. What does that really mean? And why is it so often misunderstood?
It's misunderstood because people have made it seem like something sinister. The only way to understand Zionism is to look at how it began and to go back to its roots. And ancient Zionism is based on the scriptures of the Jewish people. It's not based on only that. There's a lot more to it. But to be able to explain it properly, we need to go there. We need to go back to where it began. There's a very good quote from Abbai Kovner, who's a Jewish author, and he explains Zionism in saying it's the story of a people who were scattered all over the world and yet remained a single family, a nation that time and again was doomed to destruction and yet out of the ruins rose to new life. So Zionism essentially is that every single Jew in the world, it doesn't matter where they live, where they were born, if they are Jewish, if they are considered to be Jewish, they have the right of return to the ancient Jewish homeland, which is Israel. And if we go back, if we have a look at the word Zion, okay, it appears 152 times in the Jewish scriptures. It appears 7 times in the New Testament, of which 5 are quotes from the Jewish scriptures, and it doesn't appear at all in the Quran. The concept of Zionism is older than Judaism. Officially, Judaism as a religion began when the Israelites left Egypt and they went to Mount Sinai, where Moses was given the Torah, and that's where officially codified Judaism began. But the concept of Zionism began 500 years before. It began with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. And we read that in our scriptures, it says, the whole land of Canaan, where you now reside as a foreigner, I will give as an everlasting possession to you and your descendants after you, and I will be their God. Right? So that's in Genesis chapter 17. And then again, it says that the Lord appeared to Isaac. So firstly, he says it to Abraham. Then he appears to Isaac and he says, for to you and your descendants, I will give all these lands and will confirm the oath I swore to your father Abraham. I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and I will give them all these lands, and through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed. And that's in Genesis 26. And then we read, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac. So now he's speaking to Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. And it says, I will give you, Jacob, and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All people on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. And that's in Genesis 28. So we see here that the covenant of the land, right, is not a Semitic covenant. It doesn't involve Arabs. It's not for the descendants of Ishmael. It's the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And it's an everlasting covenant that God made with the forefathers of the Jewish people. So when Judaism was codified 500 years later through Moses, Zionism, the return to Zion, became central to Judaism. So you cannot separate the two. So people need to know that the covenant of the land of Israel that God promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? It wasn't with Ishmael, and Abraham had other children later with other wives, okay, after Sarah died. It wasn't with them either. It was specifically with the people who became the forefathers of the Jewish people and whose mother was Sarah, not Hagar, the mother of Ishmael. It was Sarah, and that is where the covenant of the land came through, no other people. So if we look at the first time where we can really see the concept of Zionism expressed and this whole yearning for the return to Zion, we go back to the Babylonian exile, which took place 2,600 years ago. And the Jews who were living there in Persia, they were exiled from Israel by Nebuchadnezzar, and they were taken to Persia. And they spoke the words that everybody knows, right? By the rivers of Babylon, we sat and wept when we remembered Zion. There on the poplars, we hung our harps, and there our captors asked us for songs. Our tormentors demanded songs of joy, and they said, "Sing to us one of the songs of Zion." So the captors of the Jewish people, they were aware of Zion. They said, "Sing us the songs of Zion." And the Jews replied, "How can we sing the songs of the Lord while in a foreign land? But if I forget you, Jerusalem, may my right hand forget its skill. May my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth. If I do not remember you, and if I do not consider Jerusalem my highest joy." So there we see the longing and the return to Zion after being in diaspora in Persia for 70 years. And soon after this, the Jewish people who were living in Persia returned to Zion, and they rebuilt the Jewish temple, the second temple. Now, these words, this yearning for Zion, they have been pertinent in every diaspora for every single Jew outside the land of Israel. Whenever Jews have been exiled, we have wept for Zion. And through the last dispersion of almost 2,000 years, the return to Zion has been central to our daily prayers and all of our festivals. And you know that worldwide we pray, "May our eyes behold your return to Zion. Blessed are you who restores his presence to Zion." And again, "Have mercy, O Lord our God, on Jerusalem, your city, on Zion, the resting place of your glory. Rebuild Jerusalem, the holy city, soon in our days." There is no other religion that prays for the return to Zion. Not Christianity, definitely not Islam. No religion has got this concept of the return to Zion. It's central to its faith, to its core beliefs. And you would know that at the end of every Jewish Passover, for 2,000 years, we close with the words, "Next year in Jerusalem." And Jerusalem is synonymous with the word Zion. So how strange that no other religion has that everyone wants to claim Jerusalem, everyone wants to claim Israel, and yet none of them in the past 2,000 years have those words as part of their liturgy and part of their prayers. It's astounding that they are challenging us on our right to Zion, on our right to Israel, yet none of them have ever had that as part of their sacred writings and their liturgy. It's very, very important that people realize that.
We spoke about Zionism. I want to talk about anti-Zionism. Some argue that anti-Zionism is just a cover for anti-Semitism, while others say it's a legitimate political stance. Is it possible to be anti-Zionist without being anti-Semitic?
No, it's not possible. Because as I said before, if you are anti-Zionism, that means you are anti that Jewish people have the right to return to their homeland. So where do people want us to go? Where do the anti-Zionists want us to go? Do they want us to go back to the crematoria of Auschwitz? Do they want us to go back to the camps? Do they want us to go back to the countries where, even though we blessed those nations and everything we were able to give, at some point they expelled us, even though later they wanted us back because they realized they couldn't do what we were doing, right? So these anti-Zionists, where would they like us to go? So that in itself tells you that anti-Zionism is hatred of Jews. It's anti-Judaism. It's anti-us. Because if they take away, if I'm expelled from my home, then where do I go? I become homeless. So the anti-Zionists are very, very much anti-Semites. There is no way, you cannot separate the two. You cannot separate me from where I live. You cannot separate me from my home, because that means I live homeless. I'm stateless, and I'm subjected to what the nations have done to us for 2,000 years. For the first time, we're back home in that time, in all that time. And now there are people who are anti our homeland. So where do they want us to go? I think it's a very clear message of what they are saying.
Thank you, Luana. I think you really explained thoroughly the subject. We touched a little bit. I know we're going to do it again next week. So thank you for this. For you listeners, I invite you to ask questions if you want. You're welcome to write them in the comments below so we can look them up. And if we have time, we're going to answer those questions.
One other thing I want to say is a lot of people say Zionism is different from Judaism. No, it's not. As I explained before, Zionism came first. The concept of the land of Israel came before the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. So when Judaism was established as the religion of the Jewish people, Zionism already existed, and it became central to who we are. We cannot separate a land and a people. We can't say you can have Judaism without Zionism, or you can have Zionism without Judaism. It's exactly one and the same.
Next week, we're going to continue talking about this.
Yes, that would be good. I think it needs to be broken up because it's too long a topic to have in one sitting. But we've explained, or hopefully people have understood what ancient Zionism was about and how it began, and how this is not the first time. It's not a new concept. It has happened throughout Jewish history, where Jews have been exiled from our land and Jews have wanted to return to Zion. And those Jews in Persia, right, 2,600 years ago, they were Zionists. They wanted to return to Zion. And that's why they said those words. By the rivers of Babylon, we sit and weep, and we want to return to Zion. So next time we can move on from the ancient Zionism to the modern movement, which is exactly the same. We call it modern because it began in the 1800s, right? So it's not 2,600 years ago or 4,000 years ago with Abraham. So we can look at what happened in the 1800s when the Jews of Russia and Eastern Europe realized it's time to go home. We can't be here anymore. We can't be subjugated to people who keep killing us. We need to go home. And that's how the modern return to Zion began. And we can discuss that in our next session.
We will. Thank you very much, Luana. Thank
You're
you. It was
welcome.
very interesting.